You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. We also focus on when it comes to black folks getting the money. And so one of the things you've been hearing me talk about a lot on this show, and then, of course, we still are talking about it, is the notion of hashtag where's our money, hashtag black economic justice. And again, white America loves for us, they ain't got no, I'm just letting y'all know, white America really has no problem for us talking about mass incarceration and criminal justice reform and social justice. But when you get to the money, then it all changes. See, I told y'all last week, they didn't have a problem with Dr. King when he was talking about voting rights, when he was talking about housing, when he was talking about going to parks and restrooms and riding buses. Actually, they did have a problem with housing because they filibustered that for 2 years because they knew that was also dealing with wealth. But when Dr. King started talking about the money, that's when there was a problem. Friday, Vice President Kamala Harris and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen held a virtual discussion with the U.S. Black Chamber, Inc. And we live streamed that right here on our Roland Martin Unfiltered platform. As you can see the full discussion, it's about going to our YouTube channel. As a part of the conversation, they talked about the American Rescue Plan and how it could help black businesses. Both Yellen and Harris confirmed there will be aid and support for black businesses who have suffered far worse than their white counterparts during this economic crisis. Now, there were 2.6 million black-owned businesses in America prior to COVID. Some reports say we lost 40% of black businesses. Y'all, do the math. That's more than 1 million. Now, keep in mind, of the 2.6 million black-owned businesses we had prior to COVID, 2.5 million only had one employee. They were doing an average revenue of $54,000. So let's talk about this with Ron Busby. He's the president of the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. Glad to have you here, Ron. The thing here is, when I talk about black economic justice, I've said this when I keynoted your organization, that too often there have been black economic conversations and black business people weren't in the room. I have nothing against any civil rights group at all, but that ain't what they do. If you're going to talk about black economics, you should be talking to black people who literally own businesses, who are the ones dealing with that very subject.
That's a great point, and thank you for having us on. And Friday was historic in the fact that, first, obviously, we had the vice president, but equally, if not more important, was the fact that the Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, was at the table. And had we had the opportunity to be at the table earlier on, I think many of the things that we suffered as black business owners and just black people may not have occurred. As you stated, we had 2.6 million black-owned businesses and 2.5 had no payroll, but yet the stimulus package was based upon the payroll needs of the businesses versus the needs of the businesses. And so many of the businesses, 76% of our businesses, said they either got no funding or less than what they needed because of the fact that most black-owned businesses have employees, but they're contractors, they're
right.
1099s, they're family members, but yet they weren't able to write off or even pass on any of that expense to the federal government.
Yeah. I mean,
so it is important for us to
I'll give you an example. I mean, the reality is the number of employees that we have here, we had 10, 12 people. We only have, though, 5 who are full-time. More than half of the people actually are contract. So when we submitted our PPP application requesting about 238,000, we only got 38,000 because of the number of full-time. And this is also an example of and so then what happened was those people who are contract, the way the rules were set up, they had to apply individually But here was the problem. They didn't have the same relationships. First of all, those of us who had relationships with banks or with organizations that could actually fast track our application was different from those even black businesses who had no relationship. And one of the things that we learned in PPP and that Congress had no idea about was that if you were a black business, if you were not dealing with loans from a bank, frankly, and the black business was thinking, yeah, well, this is my bank. No. The banks were like, no, you just got a checking account. You're not really a customer. You have a check. So they treated businesses that actually had credit lines and loans from the bank as customers. If you had a checking account, you just had a checking account.
Well, the problem was the banks got paid based upon the size of the loan. If the average black-owned business stated was $54,000 in annualized revenue, and the first round of PPP, the average size loan was $150,000, we were never going to be a good loan. Even the second round, the average size loan was $75,000. Once again, it was not a good relationship. Now, as we prepare to roll out the next portion of the loans, you'll see that they're pushing many businesses now to go to CDFIs, community banks, which is great, except for the fact that the majority of black businesses still bank with the Wells Fargos and the B of A's and the larger institutions because they understand that's where they can get the deposits. And so black banks make money just like other banks when you make a loan. And so many black banks didn't have the infrastructure nor the dollars to be able to facilitate many of the small black-owned business loans that were needed. And so we're trying to hold both the larger institutions accountable as well as making sure that the smaller CDFIs and black-owned banks get the opportunity to participate. And most importantly, Roland, it was about relationships, as you stated. When the stimulus package came out that Friday, it was a $349 billion stimulus package. By Saturday afternoon, $250 billion of those dollars had already been awarded to 50 publicly traded white firms without any questions about did they need it for payroll? Had they lost customers? Had they lost revenue? It was relationships. And so by the time the smaller businesses, not even micro businesses, but when I say smaller businesses, I'm talking about businesses with 100 employees or less, even had the chance to be included, they were so far down the line, many of the banks did not have the ability to even have conversations with them.
See, the thing here, and why we are talking about this and why we're doing this segment, like I got somebody named CC on my YouTube channel who says, reparations now. Well, here's the deal. You got to get 218 votes in the House. You got to get 60 votes in the Senate. Has to be signed into law. Then it has to also withstand a judicial challenge. Good luck.
Yeah.
Here's what we're talking about right now. What we're talking about right now is the federal government spends $500 billion a year on contracts. On media advertising alone, the federal government spends $1 billion a year. There are billions of dollars being spent every single year on contracts in the Department of Defense. This brother Joe Anthony is suing DDB. They got a 10-year, $4 billion advertising contract from the Department of Defense. 10 years, $4 billion. That's $400 million a year. So while all the folks over here argue for reparations, and knock yourself out, I'm going to try to get the existing money right now and get a fair share, because the problem is we're sitting here, we should be saying, okay, what's the black participation when it comes to the federal pension fund? What's the black participation when it comes to advertising? The black participation when it comes to HUD contracts? When it comes to breaking up the larger contracts, going from prime, forcing us to be subprime. So my deal is that's where we are. The short-term money right now. Okay, COVID. How much money is going to firms doing testing? And what about what black companies actually are doing testing? What about the distribution of vaccine? What about, the awareness campaigns when it comes to the vaccine as well? I saw a commercial last night on the Super Bowl from one company saying, take the vaccine. There are billions sitting on the table right now, and we've got to be getting the money that's on the table right now.
That's why it was very important to have the secretary at the meeting. I believe that it is people that are important as much as it is policy, because it is people that will be at the table that will ensure that our voices as well as our concerns are there. Let me say this. Early on, when we first came up with the stimulus package during the last administration, nowhere in the 700 plus pages of documentation did you read the words Black or African American. Let me also say this. When we got to the table, the folk that were already at the table, unfortunately, were the Asian community. And just like when Rodney King happened, I lived in Oakland. When Rodney King's situation happened in Southern California, it was the Asian community that had their documentation prepared, they had the need, they had the response, and they were the ones that got the funding early on. You know Danny Bakewell well, Roland, in his role there. He got involved and he was able to change the dialogue later on. When we got to the table, it was going to be the Asian community that was saying, hey, our businesses are suffering. When people walk into our facilities and stores and restaurants, they see that it's Asian owned and they leave. When they see us on the side of the street, they go to the other side of the street. So thus, they felt like they should be in front of the line. We said, no way. If anybody's going to be at the front of the line, it should be African-American business owners and Black communities. We were then successful in saying, okay, we will make it race neutral, but it's got to be based upon data. Now, the U.S. Black Chamber came to the conversation early on and said we were going to lose between 35 and 40% of our businesses. No one wanted to hear that because there was not data there, and they felt that it was an emotional conversation. Then the Federal Reserve came back and said, oh, guess what? You actually lost 41% of your businesses. Then all of a sudden became, how did that happen? What can we do? We've got to be intentional. We can no longer allow the federal government or anyone else to create solutions around diversity and inclusion, around minority participation. Roland, this is a Black show, and I love you for that, because this ain't a Black and brown conversation or a minority issue. This is a Black issue, and there needs to be Black programs and Black accountability. And that was what the whole intention of Friday was, to lay out the concerns of Black businesses as well as the solutions of Black businesses, and making sure that this administration was going to be held accountable.
But Ron, we also got to explain to Black people, all these people out here that, I love it when they love playing this clip where Kamala says, I'm not going to do anything that's specifically for Black people, because they can't. You have to, you literally cannot pass, like when somebody says, well, you know, this bill was passed for the gays. Somebody on YouTube said that. First of all, you can pass a bill when you say LGBT, that means Black gay, white gay, Asian gay, Latino gay, exactly. That mean gay, exactly. Okay? That mean gay. Everybody. You cannot pass a race-specific bill. All y'all folks who be saying all this nonsense because y'all listen to too many other Black people who yap their mouth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, who will not tell you what the federal law is, how the Supreme Court has already ruled, which is why policymakers have to craft language that actually goes to affected groups or disaffected groups at disproportionately us. So, perfect example. We have died at a disproportionate rate due to COVID. So if you craft a COVID bill, and if you say that the media advertising dollars for COVID should be targeted first to communities most disproportionately impacted by COVID, nowhere in what I just said have I said Black. But what I did say was Black.
You can even do better. We know the 40 communities, the 40 zip codes, the 40 counties that were impacted the most by COVID-19. When the infrastructure bill is being created, we're saying go to those 40 counties first. We know that those 40 counties consist of predominantly Black communities. So then we know that it's targeted for those zip codes. Secondly, we can say that the contractors need to be housed within those zip codes. So we now know that Black contractors have the opportunity to participate in the infrastructure bill. The third leg of that is we can now say to those contractors that are being awarded those contracts that you need to hire from within the zip code in which the infrastructure is being created. So now we've attached the city or the state, more than likely the city. We've attached contractors, more than likely Black, and we've attached the employee base, which is more than likely also going to be African Americans. That portion of it we can do, and it not be race-based, but geography as well as need.
And so, what is your plan? Clearly, you have an administration. First of all, I'm gonna get that in a second. Also, explain to the folk, because again, I walk people through this. We talk about contracts. The Trump folk moved back to the old way of doing business with Reagan, with typical Republicans, and that is what they did was they stopped. They bundled contracts. And so that meant that if you try to fight for a contract, compete for one, you were competing for $100 million contract versus competing for a $10 or $20 million contract. And so that throws people out. Also, didn't the Trump people also stop tracking?
Yeah, I was going to say, more importantly than that is there has been no transparency in the last 4 years of who's been awarded contracts, how much, and what the diversity. In the previous administration, we've always known that SBA had a goal of 23%. The last 4 years of the Obama administration, they exceeded that to the tune of around 27%. As soon as this Trump administration came into play, they no longer had transparency there, so there was no accountability. We could not see who was being awarded contracts or who was losing contracts. We don't know what the contracts were paying. We do know that during his administration, the richest man in the world was Elon Musk, and he got there through federal government contracts. So we
well, hold on, wait a minute. Donald Trump's daddy. Donald Trump's daddy's financial, Donald Trump's money is a result of federal housing contracts. His daddy was a billionaire because of federal contracts, exclusively.
Yeah, so Donald Trump understands the federal government very, very well. So there were some things that we were successful, and I hate to say it, but under his administration. There's a program under the SBA called the 8A program, the number 8, the letter A. And it was created for Black firms back under a Republican administration in the 70s to allow minority, particularly Black firms, to be able to compete for set-aside contracts through the federal government. I participated in the program, and literally you were bidding on contracts in the millions of dollars, but you were only competing against other firms that were 8A. It's difficult to get in, and it should be, but it allowed you to grow your firm very quickly. The challenge was it wasn't really able to create generational wealth because it was 9 years. The Native American program is a lifetime program. Once you get in, you're in for the rest of your life. For the rest of us, we get in, we're in for 9 years, and then you graduate. If you look at Black enterprise today, there are always firms that are there a good 7, 8, 9 years, and then after that, they fall off the map because many of them were doing government contracts, and then when the program is expired during their 9 years, they have to retire or they have to move on to doing just regular federal contracts.
Which is one of the reasons why what I have been saying to Black companies, you must prepare yourself for that. And there needs to be, I remember I spoke to the Department of Transportation. I'm going to pull my panels, so let's get them ready, folks. I spoke to the Department of Transportation, and I gave a speech. This was under Secretary Ray LaHood under Obama.
Ray LaHood, yeah.
And I talked about joint ventures. I talked about mergers and acquisitions. And I had a black woman who came up to me and she said, for the last 2 years, my business partner and I have been preparing our company to sell. We have been preparing to sell. She said, it never dawned on us to go and buy. She said, after your speech, I immediately said to my partner, stop what we're doing. Let's now go in acquisition mode. So if we know there's a limit there, what should be happening, which requires black people to learn how to say, if I own 49 or 50 of 100 million, that's better than me owning 100 of 20 million. We then got to be able to say, look, you got to graduate, I got to graduate. If we actually merge our firms, we now are a much larger company, which means we now can compete for larger deals, and we're not out here trying to scrap. Unfortunately, we see very little merger and acquisition deals among black businesses because we're operating in silos, and I've been saying that in black media. I didn't want to launch this damn show myself. I went to every major black media company, Urban One, Black Enterprise, Essence, Byron Allen, went to all of them. Nobody wanted to partner.
So, Roland, my story is I was in the 8A program. I got to a fairly large scale number. We were doing about 7 million. I read a book by Reginald Lewis, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? I saw that he got there through acquisitions. I then spent 6 months. I bought my next firm. It was about 7 million. We were the largest black janitorial firm in the country because of acquisitions. This is the perfect time. We have lost 41% of our businesses, but that means that we cannot afford to lose the revenue in our communities. Many businesses, up to 47%, says that they will close within the next 60 to 90 days if they don't get some additional funding. And so for us, we're telling black firms now, let's look at doing joint ventures, mergers, and where it makes sense, acquisitions, so that we can continue to grow our communities and keep that revenue in our communities as well.
Julian Malvo, you're an economist. This issue, again, and look, I got some people, they're sitting here on YouTube. Look, you have been involved in the battle for reparations for a very long time, but that's a battle that's ongoing. When I'm trying to explain to folk, we got to go after the existing money right now. That means we've got to utilize our collective power. That means that we've got to have black organizations that are applying pressure, issuing public statements, calling folks to task, because we can go down the line. If we're getting 51 million out of 5 billion in media advertising, that's 1%. Then we getting 1% over here in defense and 1% over here. Hell, you ain't gonna never be able to really grow. We've got to be saying, no. We need 15%, 20%, going after that. And here's the deal. If I ask for 20 and I get 10, hell, that's still 9 more than 1.
You know, Roland, there are two things going on here. Number one, it's both and. Reparations is a just cause. And, you know, I'm on NARC, the National African American Reparations Commission, and we believe that reparations is just cause. At the same time, there's something called good public policy that is separate and distinct from reparations. What do I mean by that? It is good public policy to make sure that African Americans have a foot in the game. It's good public policy. If we're 13.4% of the population, for us to have 13.4% of the contracts. Everything that you and Brother Busby have said make a lot of sense in terms of how the contracting pile is divided and who gets it. But that's very separate and distinct from reparations. See, there are people who believe, okay, well, we'll give you a few more percent of government contracts as reparations. No, it ain't. Reparations is about what you did. Good public policy is what you go do. And what we have to fight for both, but there may be different constituencies fighting for them. When we talk about how government funds are allocated, we know as an example, the HBCU initiative took it under Bill Clinton, walked Black colleges through every agency to try to get them contracts. They were somewhat successful, not completely. Less of that under President Obama, unfortunately, and none of that under that orange man. But if we say that Harvard, Yale, Princeton basically get hundreds of millions of dollars in federal contracts, why shouldn't HBCUs get the same thing? So we have to be clear. There's a whole lot that Black people are owed. And there's a whole lot that good public policy would give us an equal stake in. And let's not get the two confused.
But Ron, what is required again is you've got to utilize, as far as I'm concerned, organizational infrastructure to be able to apply the pressure. So all of a sudden what then happens is you have the research, you have the numbers. Now all of a sudden they got to feel that pressure when the alphas and the deltas and the links and the boule and the NAACP and the Urban League are sitting here pressuring people. And let me be real clear. I'm not talking about folks deciding to give the Urban League or the NAACP $100,000. See, let me be real clear to everybody out there. I don't want people to say, hey, we can just satisfy Ron's group if we just give the Black Chamber Inc. $100,000. No, damn that. What the bank should be saying is we're going to create a $100 or $500 million line of credit for businesses that are in the Black Chamber Inc. to be able to have a credit line to be able to float your business if you get a government contract, but you can't float it for 6 months because they pay on 180 days. See, so that's why I keep saying to Black people, stop playing ourselves small, Ron. That is, when we sitting here like, no, don't come to us with the table. Come to us with the money to buy the whole damn building.
Yeah. And so there are a couple of things that have happened, and I appreciate your passion as well. One, we've increased the 8A program from 9 years to 10 years. That has been impacted effective January the 7th. So kudos to this administration. The average 8A firm is doing somewhere around $10 million. So those Black companies now get that extra year of being able to drop those kinds of dollars. The second one, and I'm so glad you mentioned the payment terms, because the federal government is notorious for being a late pay. Under the Obama administration, in 2009, during the last recession, they implemented the prompt pay, which said that the government would pay its vendors within 15 days. So now if I get a contract February 1st, I can invoice you February 15th and make payroll by the end of the month, not now requiring me to have to go get one of those high interest rate loans that we are notorious having to pay twice the interest rate of our white peers just to be able to carry the float of the federal government. So a conversation that needs to be had in addition to education, housing, all of the others, not taking away anything from a reparations conversation as well. But the lane that we live in each and every day is really talking about an economic agenda for Black businesses and Black communities.
Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that stood out when you were talking, Roland, was about the racially specific legislation. And I'm enjoying this conversation because I think one of the things we have to be mindful of is if we cannot get racially specific legislation due to the racially specific harm that this country has caused us continuously, then we're going to have to do it ourselves. We're going to have to band together, and we're going to have to link up. When we're discussing the influence of media, but also the money that could be spent in Black media and the money that could saturate the Black communities, we have a headwind. We have such a strong headwind, not only in terms of funding in general, not only funding from the federal government, but just support in general. And so we have to start crossing lines with each other and connecting and mergers and acquisitions so that we can survive, because there's really no way we're going to be able to push the envelope on issues like reparations if all Black media is defunct.
Roland, if I could just jump in for a second.
Real quick, because I need to go to Avis.
Okay, just a second. The whole notion of race-neutral legislation is flawed. We don't have race-neutral lives. And so when folks talk about race neutrality, what they're talking about is discrimination. That's all.
But the reality is, Avis, we're dealt a hand, and look, and bottom line is, it would be nice if again Democrats had focused on the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, Republicans now have a 63 majority. That's understanding the three branches of government. If you don't have the courts, then they are the ones who interpret the rules and the laws. Avis, go ahead.
Absolutely. And hopefully we'll take another look at that to see what we can do to potentially expand the court to put things right. But let me just also say I'm really enjoying this conversation around what are some solutions, because the fact that we have lost 40% or more of Black businesses is completely, it's just horrible. It is tragic. It is sad. And so I'm very interested in this conversation around the acquisitions piece and how that can maybe help some of these people who have businesses that are on the brink in that 30 to 60 day period, but maybe those business owners could get a lump sum, or maybe they can be acquired and stay on in some sort of acting role. So my question really that I'd like to raise here is, how is there anything that's being put in place? And maybe this is your organization, but how are we connecting the two? I'm sure that there are lots of business owners out here who are in a moment where they would like to be considered at least to have that as an option to potentially have their organization acquired rather than completely losing everything and having to start from ground zero. How can they be linked to other Black businesses who are in a better financial position to potentially acquire those institutions?
But before Ron speaks, let me say this here: you got to have something to acquire.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, seriously, I mean, the problem that, see, if we start, and Ron, you could definitely speak to this. If you actually do the analysis of the 2.6 million, I go back to it. 2.5 million have one employee. So in essence, they're working themselves.
Yeah.
So when you start saying, okay, we're going to merge or acquire, what am I actually getting? When you do a merger and acquisition, you got to bring, or do you have existing contracts? Is there real estate? Is there equipment? What assets are there? The reality, Ron, unfortunately for a lot of when you only have 100,000 Black-owned businesses with more than one employee, I mean, it makes it difficult. I mean, I told somebody this the other day. When we launched this show on September 4th, 2018, with 7 people, on day one, we were in the top 5% of all Black businesses in America. Yeah. On day one. We finished year one, we generated some $600,000 in revenue. We're in the top 3% of Black business in America. And so that's Ron, that's part of the problem. That's why I keep saying, people say, why do you keep saying we don't need more Black businesses? I said, we don't. We need Black businesses with capacity. We need larger Black businesses. We get a whole bunch of singles. I need more with 10, 20, 30, 50 employees, and then revenue that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 million. If we keep got singles, then when COVID hits, we're susceptible because we got nothing to sustain ourselves, and 41% get wiped away. Ron, go ahead. Final comment.
So a couple of things. One, for those firms that are in need, that are looking to get support, we're looking to merge, looking to acquire, onboard your firm at byblack.us, byblack.us. So that's where you can find out about other companies that are looking to do the same thing. Secondly, there are funds that are available. And Roland, when we asked our businesses around the country what they needed, most of them said customers. And so many of the mom or pop businesses that we talk about may not have the revenue, but they have expertise in areas and they may have customers. And so if you're a good distributor and someone else is a good marketer and someone else is a good producer and someone else is a great writer, let's build that as a consortium to now create a business that could perhaps have the size and the scale that both corporate America is in need of, our communities, as well as our needs as Black people. Again, I'm not pushing people away from starting new businesses. But at the same time, the other opportunity is there are white firms that are going out of business, Hispanic firms and Asian businesses that are going out of businesses. We should also look there. And then the last thing, there are great programs that are out here for Black-owned businesses that we aren't taking advantage of, i.e. Organizations like DoorDash are saying, hey, if you're a Black-owned restaurant, we'll waive the fees for delivery charges. Well, guess what? They said 375% has growth in restaurants. But when you look to see who's actually taking advantage of the Black-owned programs, it's Hispanic-owned restaurants. It's pizza parlors that are owned by other folk outside of our community. It's Asian restaurants. It's Thai restaurants. They aren't Black-owned restaurants. There are programs that are out here to try to help our businesses. We've got to make sure that if it's the U.S. Black Chamber, if it's Roland Martin's show, we've got to make sure that our businesses are finding those opportunities to be able to continue to survive so we can get through this as well.
And again, let me say this again for people who thought I was joking. I understood the reality of trying to start a business because, first of all, I already had a media company. I knew that. So my deal is when I went to existing Black-owned businesses, Black-owned media companies, saying, I have what y'all don't have. What I'm doing, none of y'all got. And each one, nothing. No response, nothing. And can't none of them deny we ain't had a conversations. And so, fine. I went ahead and built it. And in 2 years, we're far ahead away than what any of them are doing in terms of digital audio or video. The argument that I'm making is that we're seeing this in so many other sectors, Ron, that what we're doing is we're actually not building smart.
Man.
We're not building smart. So we got we got all these silos versus saying, wait a minute, hold up. If I'm doing 5 or 7 million with the Defense Department, but there are 3 or 4 other Black companies and they're doing 2 to 3 million or 5 million. Well, hell, if we say, why don't we merge this sucker amongst the 4 of us, and now we've got a $40 million company, we now are in a position. But here's the deal. Here's the rub, Ron. And we're going to get real. Folk then got to say, my ego has got to accept I don't have CEO on it. All I know is this here. Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world, and he don't own 51% of Amazon.
Come on.
I will say.
Final comment, Ron. Go ahead.
Oh.
Yeah, Avis, you were in the room in 2016 when we all got there, and it was 68 organizations, and we met for 2 days trying to establish the priorities for Black America.
Yes,
and we came out with 68 priorities. And the U.S. Black Chamber said, I don't want to be involved in that because if there's that, 68 priorities is not a priority.
Precisely.
The U.S. Black Chamber is in one lane, and that is about business. I'll end with this. The last 4.5, 5 years, we heard a hell of a lot about making America great again. And we say, yes, we Black folk want America to be great as well. But in order for there to be a great America, there must be a great Black America. In order for there to be a great Black America, you got to have great Black businesses. And in order for there to be great Black businesses, you need great Black chambers, and you need great Black customers. We need for you to shop with Black folk, to spend with Black folk, to support Black folk, to support Black media, and know that your voices are being carried, especially under this administration. We are going to hold them accountable. We want you to hold us accountable. But most importantly, as Roland's been saying, it is about collaboration. No one can do this effectively by itself. When we go to corporate America and say, spend more money with Black folk, they say either we can't find them or they don't have the size and the scale. We can eliminate these conversations by collaborating with each other, and that's both with nonprofits, for businesses, as well as the voices and conversations that are being had across the country.
Ron Busby, U.S. Black Chambers Inc. I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, then. This is, I just want, pull the panel back up. I really want folks to understand, the folks out here who are watching, I need people to understand why we are doing this. I had somebody, who was this? Let me go call this person out. Person says, and I'm really laughing at this here because it really is hilarious. This person, what is it? Angela Mitchell. Roland, you're being self-centered. The show is called Roland Martin Unfiltered. That's first. I'm using my experience as an example being of the problem. How can I talk about building capacity, mergers and acquisitions, and joint ventures if I don't explain to the audience how I literally try to do what I am saying I do? When you called me and said, hey man, we're trying to sit here and build this show, and we want to get the word out, I was like, all right, we'll put you on the panel. I'm not losing anything by adding you to the panel, exposing you to my audience, and people might say, oh, well, hell, Ben got a morning show. I'm going to go check his show out. That's the whole point. I was on an 80-minute call with Adrienne Bankert, who's with ABC, who's got a book and she's doing stuff, and I'm sharing expertise with her. It doesn't hurt anybody. But we also got to be honest within our community is that there are black people in our community who refuse to partner, but when they sit on panels and they tweet and post on Facebook and Instagram how we need to be about the collective, I don't want to hear nobody black talk about the collective if your ass ain't practicing what you preaching. Ben, go ahead.
Ego is a hell of a drug, Roland, and for us to miss opportunities because we can't set our own personal ego aside, right? This is Roland Martin Unfiltered. Thanks for having me on. I'll be back anytime you want me, because the fact of the matter is like just this collaboration here, you allowing me to be here is a tremendous benefit to me. And so I'm grateful for it, right? At the same time, it's like, it's symbiotic. Like it's the ability to work with other people and bring your gifts and your talents to bear that really helps us to move the ball forward in so many ways. And so I have found, I mean, and you know, we've been talking for years about this, like there are just so many missed opportunities in black media specifically because we weren't able to get those collaborations. And honestly, if we can't survive America, white supremacy, and capitalism alone, we got to clan up. We got to squad up.
I got somebody here, Julia, and look, and I ain't got a problem. Y'all know, I'm just gonna say it. I got several people who keep posting on my channel, Roland, why don't you partner with Tavis? Because in the last 20 years, Tavis ain't done shit with me. No, I mean, no. See, here's why I need y'all to understand. I need everybody here to understand. I have not been afraid to work with anybody black. But Tavis ain't never invited me to stay to Black America. In fact, I was booked on Tavis's TV show, on his radio show, then was unbooked. I never did Tavis's television show, but I didn't hold grudges. When Tavis's MLK book came out, I welcomed him onto my TV One show. Tavis had never ever booked me on anything ever. But see, I ain't tripping. I told y'all last week, Reverend Sharpton ain't never invited me to his show. Joanne Reed has never invited me to her show. The first weekend show, the daily show, the second weekend show, or her second daily show. Karen Finney had her show, MSNBC, never invited me. Melissa Harris Perry, never invited me. But when they books came out, I had them on, so I ain't tripping. But what I am saying, Julian, is that if black folks do not learn to set egos aside and realize you're not going to be able to do what John H. Johnson did, building Johnson Publishing Company. And in fact, let me go ahead and say that John H. Johnson was arrogant as hell and not helping other black people. He tried to put Essence out of business. It's in Ed Lewis's book. We got to understand, Rupert Murdoch sold Fox Entertainment to Disney for $70 billion. $70 billion. He had no problem sitting with Bob Iger. All I'm saying to our people, we can stay small by having small minds, and it's all about, I don't like so-and-so. But I would love for a black company to be built and sold for $70 billion. Will never happen if we stay small, Julian.
Well, you know, there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone rather. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that that's really what you're saying, what Busby has been saying, what other folks are saying about black business. I mean, 90% of our black-owned businesses have one O-N-E employee. So they're basically, self-employed. Avis has a great concept. She talks about the solopreneur versus the entrepreneur, where the solopreneur is somebody, they just doing their thing. The entrepreneur is someone who's really running stuff. Now, what we have to do in the African-American community is really figure out whether we want to be solopreneurs so that when we die, that's the end of it, or entrepreneurs so that we have a legacy to leave. Because if we're talking about generational wealth or other things, we have to be talking about what we're leaving other people. And I don't think that we talk about that enough. And I think Brother Man said, ego is a drug. Ego is a drug, and we see it in our community every day. And psychologists and others can explain it. We've been denied so much and we need so much attention. Hell, black people, get over it. I mean, really, as we look at what's going on and going ahead, the Department of Defense, Roland, does not want to do business with a company that has less than $1 million in assets. It's just not efficient. So we need to figure out how 10 of these companies can get together. In terms of contracting, same thing. You're talking about construction contracts. Nobody wants to, 10 companies, that's too much administrative costs for a company. So you want to get people to come together. But that's about us. We have to deal with that. But Roland Martin, let me just say this to you. You have done amazing work and need amazing credit for creating an ingenuous platform without the support of the big guys. You done it yourself. And so kudos to you.
Well, here's the deal. I did it because the people responded. And see, and that's what, and look, I told y'all, when I turned TV One down, Alfred Liggins asked to speak to me in his office. This was, I think, March 6, 2018. And he said to me, it's hard starting your own media company. And I was like, your mama started a media company. No, with one station. Kathy Hughes started. There is no urban. I need everybody to understand. There is no Urban One without that one small black station in D.C., WOL. There is no Urban One. So you got to start somewhere. I offered. I just need people to understand. I'm not saying stuff to y'all just for the hell of it. I am being as transparent as possible. When got wind, they were trying to cancel News One Now. I sat there and I said, what's our biggest problem? We can't build the audience because we don't have enough, we're not in enough homes. I then said, how could we stream? We couldn't stream our show online. Then there was a show we would do. We were doing Dish Nation, and I said, well, how are we able to broadcast Dish Nation on TV One, but I see Dish Nation on digital? So I went to TV One and I said, I have a solution. Why don't I take over ownership of News One Now, license the show to you, which gets around your cable contracts that allow for you to stream, that allow for you to license content and still be streamed digitally. I literally said we can grow News One Now as a digital show, generate more revenue and a bigger viewership. And then what we do is we do a back-end deal where you handle all of my back-end stuff, and then we do a revenue share and your sales teams handle the deal. They never responded. Then they said, I literally sent that offer. I need everybody to understand, I sent that offer in November of 2017. The day when I was told the show was canceled, it was because I kept pushing like, are we gonna get an answer to my question? So I was told they were gonna take the show from a 5-day week to a weekly show. Then they said, no, we're gonna end it all completely. The show was costing them $5 million. I knew for a fact how to produce that exact same show for $3 million. I knew how to produce it. But they didn't want to do that. When I launched Roland Martin Unfiltered, I gave them a proposal to join me as a partner. Nobody responded. So what I'm saying to everybody who's watching, I have done what I'm telling y'all to do. But what I'm saying is when other folk don't want to do it, then you just go ahead and build. You don't sit here and wait. You don't go, man, it sure be nice. One of the things that we do is we wait for consensus. We go, man, if we can get all the black organizations together. I ain't waiting on everybody. What Ron just say? All them black groups met in 2016, came up with 68. You can't do a damn thing with 68. It ain't gonna work. 3 priorities. We have the ability to change the trajectory of Black America, but it is going to require Black America to properly use its assets, to set its ego aside, to learn to work together. And here's the deal. If you don't like somebody, and it's just, and I'm real clear, somebody said, Roland, get Boyce Watkins. Hell no. Boyce Watkins would never be on this show, ever.
Lord.
Oh. No. I'm trying to explain to y'all. But Boyce knows why he's never going to be on this show. See, so I'm real clear. It ain't going to work. If I'm not going to work with you, I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to work with you. But what we better understand is we will never be able to build successful Black businesses if all of us are living in silos. Every single night. We've got some of the top Black experts. You're not going to see them on cable news or broadcast news because you swear Black people aren't experts when it comes to this health crisis. That's why we have this show and why we do what we do every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Joining us right now is retired General Russell Honore, the nation's first Black Surgeon General, Dr. Joycelyn Elders. John Hope Bryant, he is the founder of Operation Hope. Senator Kamala Harris of California, Dr. Cedrina Calder, retired General Lloyd Austin, Congresswoman Karen Bass, Commissioner Omari Hardick, Bureau President in Brooklyn, Eric Adams, Dr. Joseph Graves, America's Wealth Coach, Deborah Owens, Dr. Corey Hebert, Patel Salt, Howard University student, Pastor Jamal Bryant, Dr. Christy McDowell, Benja Ajilore, Senior Economist at the Center for American Progress, Gilda Daniels, again, author of the book, The Crisis of Voter Suppression in America. 4 stars, General Kip Ward. Dr. Oliver Brooks is President of the National Medical Association, President of the American Medical Association, Dr. Patrice Harris. Joby Benjamin, Dr. Alexia Gaffney, Infectious Disease Specialist, Dr. Georges Benjamin, Executive Director of the American Public Health Association, Malcolm Nance, Family Medicine Physician, Dr. Jen Caudle, Dr. Tashaka Cunningham, a molecular biologist, Kat Stafford. She's a national race and ethnicity reporter for the Associated Press. Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick, who is the president of Howard University, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke from the state of New York, William Spriggs, AFL-CIO economist, Andrea James, executive director of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. All right, let's go to Capitol Hill. Congressman Gregory Meeks, Congresswoman Eddie British Johnson of Texas, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, mental health clinician Jamie Singletary, Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Brayboy, as well as Dylan Hayrie, ACLU Justice Division strategist. Dr. Cindy Duke, she is a virologist. Principal Steve Perry of Capitol Prep. Health and wellness specialist Dr. Yolandra Hancock. Desmond Meade, president the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, Cliff Albright, who is the co-founder of Black Voters Matter, Michael Harriot with The Root, the Mina McWhorter, founder of Love by the Hand, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president, emerita at Bennett College, coroner Michael Fowler, is the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, mental health therapist Suzette Clark, Justin Giboney, attorney and political strategist, and Bishop Vincent Matthews Jr., Dr. Suzette McKinney, CEO and executive director of the Illinois Medical District, Dr. Leon McDougall, president-elect of the National Medical Association, Jana Bailey, Mayor of Moss Point, Mississippi, Mario King. We're going to keep driving this thing to make sure our people are fully aware, safe, protected from coronavirus. You getting the top medical experts, the top business experts, top political experts, top religious experts, because that's why we do what we do. Unapologetically and unfiltered. Ain't nobody else in the black media space doing what we do. Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.